Nope. This is your baby, Ted.
Oh yeah.
This is where you give birth.
This is my passion project.
This is your passion.
What's the best way to stop a deer?
Honk your horn.
Yeah, or just say stop. A lot of times that'll do it.
Actually, we've tried a lot of different things, ironically enough. You know the simple grunt that everybody does when that one walks by? The thing that started to occur to me lately, though, is that how many deer actually grunt from 20 feet up in a tree?
Not very many.
This is how many. 0. Yet we do it over and over and over again. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work the first time, you just keep getting louder from there.
Yeah, and I've shown that doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah.
Me and Barber blew that one out of his shoes at one time. I mean, he wouldn't stop. He was coming through, and I come to full draw, and he got to 22 yards, and I went, meh, 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 and about a third or fourth loud meh, he looked up and took off. That. And I mean, he ran for as far as I could see him.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a good situation.
Yeah.
Other times it has worked, but you know, you got to kind of read the room, I feel like, when it comes to that. So why would you stop a deer?
You stop a deer to try and get a good clean shot at a stationary target. A lot of times if you're hunting at a tree stand or on the ground, wherever, and a deer's walking down the trail in front of you, you want to try and get him to stop so you can get a good, clean, ethical shot at him.
It's going to be harder to hit them as they're moving through the brush and whatnot. And sometimes when you're shooting at a moving target, you're not practicing for that daily while you're shooting at your bag in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll end up hitting them back or hitting them in the wrong spot. It's just a more difficult shot to execute under pressure, especially if you're talking about a deer that's moving through these woods right here, and you've got these little shooting lanes that are only this wide. They can move through those shooting lanes in a half a step. You know, and it takes some time for your arrow to get to the target. So the odds of you making a good killing shot are going to go up if that deer stops.
Yeah, and throughout the deer season, the harder it is to get the deer to stop a lot of times because you get into the rut, and a lot of times they're chasing a doe or whatever else. So there's lots of different ways that you can try and get a deer to stop. A lot of times people do the classic meh or the grunt, whatever. Some people whistle at them. Warb's tried squirrel barking at him a few times.
You gotta be kidding me.
I've tried just clicking my tongue if it's a real calm day. So
show me what that looks like, though, because we were talking about examples a while ago. You said you killed a buck on public a couple years ago where it was really calm and you were afraid to grunt real loud.
Yeah, me and Cole were hunting, and it was a morning setup. It was about 9 o'clock. And all of a sudden this buck is walking right down the trail to us, and it was pretty calm that morning, and he was all by himself too, so it was coming down and getting close to my shooting lane, and I just went like that to try and get him to stop because I didn't want to just go real loud at him and spook him or run the risk of spooking him. So I did that. He didn't even react, and then I went and then he stopped right there for me. But I could see that working at certain points. Hasn't worked for me yet, but I thought it was worth a try in that situation just because of the calm conditions.
Yeah, and I've used the grunt a bunch of times. I mean, that one me and Nick killed last year, he was so rutted up and looking for the source of that sound because we grunted him in. He was paying no attention to me grunting up in that tree. I mean, I'm going meh, 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 and if he was stopping, he wasn't stopping on a dime where I needed him to. He was taking a couple more steps and then looking around. And every time he was doing that, he was getting covered up, like he was getting all the way through my shooting lane before he completely stopped. And I eventually had to shoot him walking at 8 yards, right underneath the tree, because I could not get him to stop where I needed him to in order to kill him.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing to keep in mind as a deer's coming in and you're about to stop him is he really relaxed or is he kind of on edge? That could vary what you want to do to try and get him to stop. If he's kind of on edge and you go at him, it might really spook him bad. But a lot of times if they're just coming down nice and calm, that loud noise all of a sudden just kind of makes them stop and look.
Yeah, but they've never heard a deer grunt from 20 feet up in a tree.
Yeah,
that's what I keep thinking of. It's like we're We were talking about woodsmanship tips not long ago on a different video about trying to sound like an animal while you're walking through the woods, sound realistic, don't sound like a person. Well, in my mind, a deer has never grunted from 20 feet up in a tree. So if they're walking along and they hear that in a pressured environment, that's an unnatural sound from that position. It's a natural sound from the ground, obviously. They've never heard that happen before. So it can wig them out. I've screwed it up multiple times doing that. I mean, that one example, me and Eric, that big buck was coming by and he was rutting. He was moving, like searching for doe. And I had to get loud to get him to stop. And it wigged him out. I did not get a shot. He took off, bolted out of there because he heard me grunting. And that's happened to me a couple of times now, you know, where we uttered some sort of a loud noise at them when they were real close and it just startled them. Like we were just talking about Jake snort wheezing at that one a couple years ago. It was a similar situation. Buck was rutting, he's chasing a doe, he comes by him real close and he snort wheezes at him to try just to get him to freeze up and stop, but the buck just comes unglued and takes off running before he gets a chance.
Yeah, and I had tried the snort wheeze just a few days before that. There was a buck that was running down this trail towards us and he was chasing this doe, and I was doing the classic meh, 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 and he wouldn't stop, so I went and then he locked the brakes up and I would have probably got a shot at him, but he was behind a bunch of brush at that point. So then Jake tried it a couple days later and that one just turned around and wheeled on him.
I've been monkeying with that squirrel bark a little bit because I feel like squirrels are always up in a tree and they usually alert the rest of the woods whenever animals are coming by. You know, when they do that.
Yeah.
They make that sound. What did you say? That's a gray squirrel that makes that sound? Yeah, Greg's nodding his head back here. So I started doing that a little bit more in the past, and I've just been experimenting on does and young bucks when they come by. And a lot of times they will stop, and they are not alerted at all. Yeah. They just stop and just look around because they're used to hearing that sound. And I tried squirrel barking at that buck last year that me and Nick killed, but he paid no mind to it. He had one thing on his mind, and that was finding that other buck underneath the tree that was making that sound, and he was not going to stop. That's just one thing I can think of off the top of my head, and I've tried the little, or the, you know, just to get him to pause and stop. But another thing that I'm thinking of is Ted Miller. Ted rarely grunts to stop him because he sets up his tree stand locations to stop the deer where he needs them. That's why he uses those horizontal rubs. You know, a lot of people think it's just a signpost he's trying to get pictures of deer over, but a lot of times he's making those man-made scrapes or horizontal rubs in locations where he can stop the deer for a good close-range 15-yard shot. And it works perfectly. Like those bucks come up those trails and they get to the rub where that deer scent is being left and they stop right there.
And that's going to be the most high percentage shot you can get because the deer at that point has no idea you're even in the world, hasn't heard anything to make him stop. He's just walking up there to hit that rub and relaxed as can be, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they have. Yeah, you haven't alerted them to anything. We've even had a lot of situations where we're always wanting to shoot our ground scent, wherever that's at, left around the tree that we're set up in. Had a lot of situations where a walking deer came by and we came to full draw, and as soon as they hit the ground scent, they stopped. And it gives you an extra second or two to shoot them. You know, you just want to make sure that's in an open spot from the tree that you're about to set up in. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I like to try to think creatively, and I'm interested to see how this squirrel bark works over the next few years. But it makes sense that that's a more natural sound from above that may get one of them to stop.
Another idea that Zach's actually used before is yelping at deer or like making turkey noises. And that's something that sounds more realistic, like squirrel barking when you're up in a tree too. So basically just any animal.
Any natural sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you can come up with that's enough to stop a deer a lot of times.
Yeah, and be careful when they're really close. The closer they are, the easier it's going to be for them just to turn their head and pinpoint you really fast and book it out of there. You know, we've had those situations happen. Like you said, if it's calm and you're reading the situation and they're coming in kind of tense and on pins and needles, maybe it's best for you just to draw back and try to wait for the deer to stop on its own and get a shot that way. We've even had multiple times where deer have come through the shooting lanes and we've grunted just quietly to stop them, and they didn't stop. And we just had to let them walk and let down the bow because we didn't get the right opportunity to shoot them. You know, when I was younger, I would have just, meh, 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 meh. I mean, I get excited and sometimes try to force it, and that's never a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, take a few of those tips to heart. Hopefully they'll help you all out. This is something that we've messed up a bunch in the past, and hopefully y'all can learn from our mistakes and be more successful in the field.